I'm here to ask you to be with me for 8 years. To be shoulder to shoulder. If we shrink the Washington bureaucracy, which we should by implementing the 10th Amendment, we have to grow citizenship. Because we're now returning power and authority back home that the bureaucrats have taken over. So I'm as much about growing you as a citizen as I am about shrinking them as a bureaucrat. It's the only way it's going to work. I'm here to tell you that we are in deeper trouble than we were in 1980. We're in deeper trouble than we were in 1994. And so the contract we're developing at Newt.org is a much more profound and much deeper document. We're going to develop it all the way to next fall. On September 27th, the anniversary of the original 1994 contract with America, we will unveil this contract as we grow it out, as we develop it. You can see the initial draft, the sort of skeletal structure at Newt.org right now, but it's going to keep evolving for a year. That's part one, is a legislative contract. Part two of the contract is on the first day. We will have between 50 and 200 executive orders, which we will publish on October 1st next year, so everybody will know for the last month of the campaign, if you elect me, this is what we're going to do. We're just talking about some of the things Obama's done, for example, on mining and on forestry, that we could reverse that day. And so they'll all be published, and about an hour and a half after the inaugural address, about the time that the Obama family arrives at Andrews Air Force Base to fly back to Chicago.
Yeah.
At that moment, we'll take about an hour and a half and we'll sign all these. I don't know what all of them are going to be yet. It's a work in progress from now to next October. All of you have a chance, if you go to Newt.org or your friends go to Newt.org, you have a chance to just go ahead and give us your ideas, what you wish they were. The very first one will abolish all of the White House czars. Amen. As of that moment.
Yeah.
The other two parts of the contract are a commitment to train all the appointees. I mean, think about it. We have no program today for training presidential appointees. And yet, we're taking people out of all sorts of walks of life. And we have, and I have a program. My program is the fundamental recentering of the government back on American values, on the 10th Amendment, on decentralization, on being very jobs-oriented and very committed to national security. Now, to get that done, we have to actually have, I think we have to have a program so people say, I want to serve, understand what we're doing as a team, how we're going to work together, and how we operate. And finally, we want to build, the fourth part of the contract is to build a citizen movement, so we are together making this happen, using all the different social media to tie us together. So all that's at Newt.org. I will, as the nominee, challenge the president to 7 3-hour debates in the Lincoln-Douglas tradition.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh yeah. Of a timekeeper but no moderator. We'll do 1 debate on Obamacare. We'll probably do one or two on jobs. I believe in the end he'll agree to debate.
Really?
When he announced in Springfield, quoting Lincoln extensively. And Lincoln, when he ran against Douglas, Douglas was the most famous senator in the United States. Lincoln had held office one time for 2 years and then had been in the private sector for a decade. And Douglas didn't want to debate. And Lincoln said, fine, I'm going to follow you every day. So wherever you make a speech, I'll make a speech the next day. And after about 2 weeks, Douglas began to realize that Lincoln was getting the final word everywhere. And so I will announce in my acceptance speech that unless the president agrees to 7 3-hour debates, and if he wants to, he can use a teleprompter. It's fine. We don't want to have an unfair advantage. Unless he agrees to that, the White House will become my scheduler. And everywhere he goes, I will follow 3 hours later, and I will methodically answer every speech he gives until he decides to debate.
Yeah.
And the reason's simple. We are in historically difficult times, and the president owes all of us an adult conversation that is serious. I don't care if he raises $1 billion to try to buy the election. I don't believe it's viable. And I think it tells you how weak this president thinks he is, that he thinks he has to raise $1 billion. He knows in a fair fight that he will lose. I believe when he debates, he will lose. And with your help, we'll make that possible. So I think we're at the edge of enormous things. I'll just leave you this last thought. People say to me, how fast can you turn things around? My prediction to you is late on election night, when it's clear that Obama's been defeated, that the Democrats have lost the Senate, that a principled campaign of executive orders and legislation has won. Late on election night, you will see people beginning to shift their investment plans, their employment plans, and that by Christmas of 2012, we will have a dramatically better Christmas going into a non-Obama 2013. And I think that's how fast you'll see things start to improve in the right direction. So I'm an optimist. If you'll get
Is the passage of a balanced budget amendment possible?
Is the passage of a balanced budget amendment possible? Sure. We came within one vote in the Senate in 1995. We passed it in the House by a constitutional majority, I think, of 293. It got to the Senate and we got 66. We needed 67. So clearly it's doable. And I'm strongly favored because I think politicians need something like that to give them an excuse to say no. I think it's very hard for politicians to say no if they're allowed to borrow money. Look, I believe, that, and this is a good example of why we're at such a crossroads. Reagan used to tell the story about the British worker standing along the side of the road with his son. Somebody drove by in a Rolls Royce, and he said, someday we'll take them out of that car. In America, worker standing along the side of the road with his daughter, Cadillac goes by, he says, someday you'll buy that car. Okay. The thing that's wrong with the Occupy Wall Street people is they represent the British socialist class warfare model that the way to make America fair is to make everybody poor. I tell every audience that this is the best food stamp president in American history. And if you think food stamps are the future you want for your children, you've got a great president.
You comment on Herman Cain's 999 plan.
Yeah, look, let me say first of all, I like Herman a great deal. We've known each other a long time. We fought against Hillary Care together. I appointed him to the Tax Reform Commission when I was Speaker. And I think, and as I said last night in the debate, I praise him for the boldness to at least be at the right scale. There are two profoundly wrong things with this plan. The first is I would never give the Congress a sales tax while they still had the income tax, because they'll use both. I mean, you have to deny all of modern American history to believe that it's going to be stable.
Right.
The fair tax, which Herman would like to get to, abolishes the income tax constitutional amendment before you get to the new tax. And I think he would have been better off intellectually to have gone all the way to the fair tax rather than to have this sort of hybrid. But there's a second problem with this plan. And it's the reason why it won't survive politically. I mean, I don't know what he'll do for the next phase of his campaign, but this will rapidly not survive. There is no sales tax in New Hampshire. I mean, you're now going to go to every small business in New Hampshire and say, hi, you now get to collect a sales tax. Senior citizens, when told that they're going to pay 9% sales tax on what they buy with Social Security, are just going to look at you like you've lost your mind. I mean, they're not going to think, oh, this is a really cool deal. And so, I mean, so Herman's got this problem that it is a substantial tax increase in Fulton County, Georgia, where they already pay a 9% sales tax, state and local combined. They'd be paying an 18% sales tax. And then the third problem he's got is complexity. And again, this is why slogans are dangerous. I mean, my model, if you go look at the 21st Century Contract with America, we are starting with solutions. And we'll get to slogans. I know how to do this, and I've run a fair number of campaigns in my career. But the slogans come last, they don't come first. And here's the example. Herman has two components. Because to start out, this is going to be simple. Okay? Then you say to him, all right, you say the 9% is only on new things. Okay, so that means if you have a house here that's already built, you don't pay a sales tax. If you build a brand new house, you pay a sales tax. So now you've just raised the price of new houses by 9%. You buy a used car, you don't pay a sales tax. You buy a new car, you have a 9% sales tax. So what does that do to the production of new cars? Then he went off in answer to a question. He said, well, you wouldn't pay the tax, the corporate tax, on American-made products, but you would pay it on foreign components. Okay, so now he said, let me get this straight. Okay, so I'm going to buy a Honda made in Maryville, Ohio, which is 80% American products and 20% shipped in from Japan. So now I've got to keep paperwork on all of the non-American components so I can keep track of what I owe the government. This isn't simple. I mean, all of a sudden you get into this really complicated tax code that is going to have all sorts of compliance problems. So I'm just, I think, and you saw a little bit of it last night, when you go at him a little bit and say, okay, not hostily, but just say, well, explain this part. It starts getting more and more and more complicated. And so I think he's going to have to figure out a new approach or a new model or something before this is over. Now, I think he had great courage, and it certainly served him well. 999 said to people, at least he's thought of something. Yeah. And so there's an initial rush to it until you find out what the nines are. And then it's not quite as positive. Yes, sir.
Do you think the Supreme Court is going to rule on Obamacare before next November?
Yes. I suspect they'll rule on Obamacare next year.
And you think they'll turn it down or throw out a lot of it?
Yes, sir.
I'm a financial planner, and we deal with our clients talking about living within their means and saving and that kind of a thing. Why is it? Why do you think Washington thinks that they can just spend, and that there's no end to what they can do from that standpoint?
Well, I always tell people as a historian that politicians steal. And that you need to understand historically, they want to do what they want to do, and they steal by inflation. They steal by borrowing and repudiating the debt. They steal by getting services they don't pay for. But we have a very long history, a recorded history, of politicians being stunningly unreliable. It's part of the nature of the system. The Founding Fathers tried to design a constitution which would keep them in check. And the Founding Fathers were very clear. They said over and over again, if the culture gets sick, the government will follow. If you have a culture that refuses to be serious, that refuses to recognize God, that refuses to obey basic principles, everything collapses. And so the polls had, I used to carry a sign that said 2 + 2 = 4, which we got by making a movie called 9 Days That Changed the World that Plist and I did about Pope John Paul II, going back to Poland. When they were fighting with the Soviets, they would put signs in windows that said 2 + 2. For Poland to remain Poland, 2 + 2 must always equal 4. Okay. We balanced the budget for 4 straight years. We did it as an act of will. We got within 1 vote of a balanced budget amendment, and we said, well, heck, if we're that close, why don't we pretend we passed it? And so we set out and we balanced it. And every single day we made 2 + 2 = 4. Politicians don't like pain. I mean, no normal, rational person likes pain. This is what leadership's all about. Leadership is the ability to say, we're going to pay the price to get it done. And I think this is why this election is the most important since 1860. We're either going to reaffirm that we are a hard-working, visionary country of people who believe the dream is worth going out and pursuing, or we're going to decay into a European-style socialist welfare state where we're all dependents, the bureaucrats run our lives, and we sort of get along hoping the government takes care of us. There's no middle ground. And so I think this election has enormous import. I am very grateful for all your help. I'm very grateful for Gordon and Lisa hosting this. I would urge you, if your friends tell you they like what I'm doing, ask them to go to newt.org, just my first name, and sign up. Even if they only give $5 or $10, the sheer number of supporters makes a huge difference. Any of you who want to, we're going to have a town hall meeting in a little while. We'd love to have you come and join us there. And I'm very grateful that you came today. Thank you very much.